Hello friends, here is a new story. I hope you all like the video and subscribe to my channel. Now here is summary. When they were mortal they were in love, now they are gods that are twins with a child. What will Artemis and Apollo do when the lines are not so simple anymore? Naruto will still be a Jinchuriki but will be raised by the twin archers in the PJO world, not Konoha. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Chapter 12. Naruto's claiming is totally not the norm. Naruto just stood there awkwardly as the entire camp started yelling in disbelief at his claiming. It was hard enough that Percy was a son of Poseidon despite the oath of the big three, but the much bigger news was his parentage. Not only did it appear his mother broke her sacred oath, it was with her twin. Several minutes later Chiron had enough and luckily Mr. D was there as well. "Shut up you brats!" Mr. D yelled as the camp instantly quiet. They knew he was not allowed to hurt them directly, but nobody really wanted to test if he could find a loophole around his punishment. "Thank you, Mr. D," Chiron said calmly as he coughed to clear his throat. "This is no mistake. Naruto is the son of Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo," Chiron announced as several people looked ready to protest, but Dionysus' glare quickly silenced everyone. "If you don't believe us, take a look at our little superstar's face," Mr. D said as everyone gasped, making Naruto confused. "My face?" Naruto asked with confusion. Percy just pointed at the lake so Naruto could take a look. Naruto looked at his own reflection and could not help the gasp as well. He still had his father mortal looks, but not instead of just blue eyes. His eyes had a silver light to them, along with his spiky blonde hair now having auburn tips like his mother. Naruto was extremely happy to have physical signs of being his mother child, as his dad always joked that Naruto got his genes, much to Naruto and Artemis' annoyance. "Congratulations, Naruto," Selena silently thought, seeing the happy expression on his face. For some reason she had a feeling Naruto knew who his parents were from the beginning. Annabeth however realized something based on Mr. D's, Chiron's and even Naruto reactions that they must have knew about this the whole time. "Chiron, you knew about Naruto and never told us?" Annabeth said with some hurt, as she considered him the closest thing to a real father she had ever had. Chiron stayed quiet, not knowing how to respond, as the camp once again went into yelling mode. Mr. D however was less impressed at the annoyed campers. "You brats have no idea what is going on here and yet you demand answers?" Mr. D hissed as his eyes started to turn purple. As annoyed as he was at Chiron's soft attitude, he at least respected Chiron's ability to teach children how to survive, at least for a bit. Everyone grew quiet and afraid of the fuming god until they heard Naruto gasp and put his hand behind with a knife placed in it. "It seems like you have not been slacking, huh, son?" a cocky yet proud voice said in amusement, as everyone turned around and saw Apollo in somewhat casual clothes appear with his arms crossed. "Lord Apollo!" everyone yelled as everyone including Percy fell to their knees. Naruto looked behind him to see a knife bounce off his own, which was aimed at his shoulder. He had instinctively used a knife to block what would have been a blow to his unguarded side. He looked around until he saw someone in a high tree. He leapt back as several arrows pinned where his foot was. "Chiron, Lord Apollo, Naruto is being attacked," Annabeth shouted in concern. Despite her hurt feelings at being left in the dark, she still considered Naruto a close friend. Several campers also looked worried, but to their surprise Apollo just chuckled. "No need to worry, demigods. This is just a form of training," Apollo remarked as they looked at him in disbelief. "Who would be crazy enough to have this as a form of training?" Claris said gruffly. True, she loved to fight, but she preferred to fight she could see, not all this cloak and dagger stuff. Apollo grinned but had a dark look in his eyes as he said, "You are lucky she is preoccupied training with Naruto, or you might be a nice squirrel for a remark like that." Claris shuddered. As much as she would like to say she could take on the gods besides her father, she knew just like anyone the twin archers were considered the strongest Olympians besides the big three themselves. "And too, she? You don't mean?" Annabeth said in shock as everyone started to fit the clues in. "Yet Mama Bear herself, Artemis," Apollo said proudly as everyone turned back to Naruto, who had somehow gotten his sword out with silver arrows and knives surrounding him. It appeared he had deflected them all, leaving him uninjured if not somewhat tired. "Glad to see you haven't let yourself grow weak, my little star," Artemis said proudly as she leapt from the tree and in front of Naruto, who was huffing a bit from exhaustion. "It never seems like I can get any better, since every time I feel myself grow stronger, I feel like the gap between us never shrinks even a bit," Naruto retorted with a grin. "Of course, not Naruto. I always bump up the training just a little bit every time you improve so you don't get a big head like your papa," Artemis revealed as Naruto shrugged. The rest of the camp were still on their knees but shocked silence at the interactions between Naruto and Artemis. True, most of them had not met Artemis in person, especially the males, but the myths and what their parents told them said she hated being around males, even gods. Yet the Artemis in front of them seemed nothing but happy and proud of her son, with Naruto seeming to have no form of formality around the goddess. Apollo whispered to Mr. D and Chiron, who whistled, getting everyone attention. "Campers, in 30 minutes time we shall have a counselor meeting in the big house to explain everything," Chiron announced as everyone slowly got to their feet. "Consider the rest of the evening free except for the counselors," Chiron added as everyone looked at each other in confusion. "Clear out, brats. Artemis, Apollo and I will be at the meeting, so the counselors better not be late," Mr. D snapped as everyone except Naruto and his parents left in a hurry. Apollo sent a grin at his demigod children as he winked at his girls and gave a grin at his sons, who awkwardly waved back at their dad as they walked off. None of them had much contact with Apollo, but he seemed nicer than what had endured from Mr. D. Silena wanted to talk to Naruto about everything, but judging by the mood of the gods it seemed like this was a private chat, so she led her cabin back to the Aphrodite cabin. Annabeth did the same, who privately she swore to herself she would find the answer she craved. Nobody noticed the dark look in Luke's eyes as he led Hermes' cabin back to their cabin. "I was right. No matter what small steps the gods take, it means nothing. The rest of the gods cannot spare even 5 minutes with their own children, and yet Naruto gets the full attention and love of 2 gods for himself. Despicable. I swear I will lead Lord Kronos' revival and rid this world of those traitorous gods once and for all," Luke thought to himself angrily. He had begun to question whether the gods needed to be replaced when the 2 new cabins were built, but seeing Naruto's claiming and loving parents reaffirmed his belief in the gods' destruction. Meanwhile, back with Naruto, Apollo and Artemis. As soon as the campers had left, Artemis snapped her fingers, making them disappear into the Artemis cabin so they could have some privacy. As soon as Naruto blinked away the slight disorientation of godly travel, his mother pulled him into a tight hug, pressing his face into her chest as she whispered into his hair, "It's okay, our little moon and sun, we are here." Apollo just stood back as he watched mother and son reunite with a smile. He would get some time shortly, but he knew that Artemis, no matter what she claimed, was a mess when she and him were forced to let Naruto leave the hunt so he could make his way to Camp Half-Blood on his own. "Ko-chan," Naruto said quietly, just enjoying the love of his mother which he sorely missed. He knew it was a bit greedy of him, since most demigods rarely saw their godly parent more than once a year due to the ancient laws, while he had 2 godly parents who watched him always. After several minutes, Apollo coughed, getting the attention of Naruto and Artemis, who broke the hug. "Looking good with the Artemis traits, I gotta say," Apollo commented as Artemis smiled widely as she took in her son's new eyes and hair. "Normally a claiming would not affect your appearance, but since you're different than demigods, I guess Artie's appearance also got reflected on you," Apollo remarked as Artemis frowned at the nickname. "Dad, you are doing it again," Naruto told him with a sigh, referring to the nickname and the fact he overanalyzed things again. "Sorry, kiddo," Apollo chuckled, only to grunt as Naruto launched himself into his dad for a tight hug, which he returned effortlessly as if he promised for years. "Dad, Mom, I have made some friends here, but I still miss you and the hunt every day," Naruto admitted as both parents smiled at him. "We miss you too, sweetheart," Artemis said as Naruto pulled away and sat in between his parents on a bed labeled Chloe. "I want big sis Chloe be mad I am sitting on her bed?" Naruto asked with a wince as he remembered how protective his bug sisters were about their things. Artemis chuckled and just said, "Of course not, Naruto. Remember you slept next to them almost every night when you were a child." Artemis had fond memories of Naruto as a toddler, crawling and falling asleep into the tents of Zoe and Chloe on odd nights, which neither minded getting to cuddle with their little brother. Naruto was embarrassed, especially when Zoe started to seem different to him, kinda like how he saw Silena, but still different. Naruto flushed and said, "I was a kid back then. I am a lot more mature now." Both parents just smiled at their son, who tried to act like a rebellious teen, but in their eyes was still their baby who could talk now. "Sure, you are sunshine," Apollo teased as they just sat there until Naruto realized something. "Won't Lord Zeus be mad you are both here with me? Wasn't the whole point of me going to Camp Half-Blood so he would feel you won't smothering me too much?" Naruto asked in worry. He was worried his parents would get in trouble for contacting him in the one place they were not supposed to. To his surprise, his parents gave him pained smiles. Father has bigger issues on his hands right now than watching what we do, Apollo said evasively as Naruto glared at him with the same look Artemis usually did when they disagreed. Alright, I guess I will explain. Apollo relented when Artemis gave him a look as well. He explained how the Master Bolt was stolen and how Zeus was sure Poseidon had something to do with it despite the lack of proof. You mean? Naruto asked in shock. Yes, your friend Percy will be grave danger and the quest will need to issued soon before the summer solstice, Artemis said gravelly. Well, why can't you guys find it? Naruto asked in shock as he knew his father could see anything underneath the sun and his mother's tracking skill was unrivaled. The twins looked at each uneasily. Father did send us, Hermes and Ares, out to scout for it, but for months we were unsuccessful, Artemis said sadly. It is almost like a godly force is hiding it from my sight, which should not be possible since gods and titans cannot steal each other's symbols of powers. Only demigods can, but then we would be able to find it, Apollo remarked as Naruto looked troubled as well. Naruto widened in realization. Wait, is this why you have been acting so worried the last few months? Naruto asked as his parents nodded. Yes, ever since the winter solstice we have feared more and more that father would see you as a threat, so we sent you away to Camp Half-Blood so he would have no reason to doubt your innocence, Apollo revealed as he looked sadly at Naruto, expecting to see scorn only to see understanding. I get it, but I don't understand why everyone assumes Percy is the thief. He is like totally new to everything, Naruto said with annoyance as Artemis just smiled mirthlessly. Father is too proud to see reason right now and he has to find someone to blame. Uncle Poseidon has always been the closest to rival father's powers, so it makes him an easy target, Artemis explained. Naruto sighed and asked something he was wondering for a while. I realize Ani Hestia is not supposed to interact with demigods, but where is she? I have only seen her once at camp since I got here. He had seen her at the campfire and swore Percy saw her too, but she only winked at him and vanished in the flames before he could talk to her. Your auntie has the most important job right now. She is the only reason father has not gone to war with uncle already. She's the only thing that keeps Olympus stable right now, but I fear if the Master Bolt is not returned by the summer solstice, not even she will be able to hold back father's rage, Artemis revealed as Naruto grew infuriated that his peace-loving aunt was forced to play peacemaker when his grandfather was not seeing right. Naruto was about to ask more, but Apollo just stood up and said, sorry kiddo, but it's time to explain to the camp who you really are. Artemis held Naruto's hat as she prepared to teleport them out of the cabin, which was enchanted so only her, Apollo, Naruto and the hunt could actually enter. Not even other gods were able to enter without permission. Are you guys going to tell them about Juno? Naruto asked, looking down at his stomach. Artemis and Apollo just smiled at him before wrapping him in a brief hug. Of course not. Nobody but us and the council needs to know about the other power you hold, Naruto, Artemis assured him as they disappeared in a light, ready to explain this to Greek demigod. Chapter 13 Percy gets a quest. Naruto blinked as he and his parents were teleported to the big house and he saw 14 chairs around a very large table with Mr. D and Chiron sitting in the head of the table in much more extravagant chairs. Yay, now we got Apollo, Artemis and Nate here, we can finally start this meeting, Mr. D said in a dramatic tone, flinching when Artemis gave a glare for the wine god, saying her son's name wrong on purpose. Everyone instantly bowed at the two Olympians while Naruto blushed slightly when his mom fussed over him and whispered, sit on the seat for my cabin, Naruto. It's your birthright to represent me at this camp. Naruto nodded and waved back to Selena when she beamed at him, making his mother frown but keep a stoic expression. He also waved to Annabeth, who looked at him in surprise but still waved back. He sat in between Lee and Charles Beckendorf in a seat that had his mother's moon on it. Naruto exchanged a fist bump with his paternal brother Lee, making Apollo smile before turning serious again. Since Lady Artemis and Apollo are rarely at camp, I think it is only appropriate for each cabin counselor to introduce themselves to start with, Chiron suggested as the gods nodded their agreement. Naruto was a bit annoyed when he looked around and saw several guys have blushes when they saw his mother. He knew his mother had an effect on guys without even trying due to her beauty, but he still wanted to defend his mother's honor. However, he knew better than anyone his mom would turn any guy that lusted after her into a woodland creature for at least a while, so he calmed himself down. Naruto saw the first 3 chairs and was a bit confused. He knew there were no living children of Zeus and Hera only had an honorary cabin, but why was Percy not here to represent Poseidon? Hello Lady Artemis, Lord Apollo. I am Katie Gardner and I represent my mother Demeter of Cabin 4. Katie said with a polite bow. Naruto looked at her and see a girl his age with brown hair and brown eyes who looked at with a polite but curious look when he saw him look at her. Naruto bashfully looked away as his father smirked in pride, nursing a bump on his head courtesy of his mother. I am Claris Laru on behalf of Cabin 5 Aries. Claris said gruffly and added Lady Artemis, Lord Apollo. When Krien gave her a reproachful look, Naruto expected this kind of behavior from her and knew likely neither of his parents would get that offended. It is an honor Lady Artemis and Lord Apollo to be in your presence, Annabeth said in awe as Apollo grinned and Artemis looked intrigued by the girl. My name is Annabeth Chase and I represent Cabin 6 Athena, she added as she looked at Naruto still in awe due to the fact he came from two gods but appeared to be not a god. Artemis looked uneasy at the look from Annabeth while Apollo looked thoughtful. I don't like the look Dad is giving me, Naruto thought as he saw Apollo give a look to Annabeth and back to him with a sly grin. Naruto knew his mother would rather him avoid any relationships while his dad wanted him to get a harem much to his embarrassment. Father, Lady Artemis. I am Lee Fletcher and I represent my godly father Apollo, Lee said with respect as Apollo nodded to his son while Artemis briefly looked at him with a nod. You know me Mom, Dad, Naruto said simply as both parents beamed at him, making the rest of the campers still a bit shocked at the level of love two gods had for one child. One camper in particular clenched his fist in anger as Luke restrained himself at the injustice in his eyes. My lady, my lord, I am Charles Beckendorf who represents Cabin 9 Hephaestus, Charles said with a bow of his head. Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, my name is Selena Beauregard and I am a friend of your son Naruto, Selena said politely, blushing slightly as Naruto beamed at her. Artemis frowned slightly as Apollo's face grew a grin. I represent my mother Aphrodite of Cabin 10. Selena added as she looked down, seeing Artemis look at her critically. Artemis remembered what Aphrodite said about her chid possibly liking Naruto, so she swore she would keep a close eye on Selena for her son's sake. Artemis knew she was more than pretty enough, but she would be damned if she let her son be charmed by a girl whose mother's hobby included breaking people's hearts. Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, I am Luke Castellan representing Hermes of Cabin 11. Luke said politely as he looked down so no one saw his hatred in his eyes. Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis, I am Castor representing Dionysus of Cabin 12. Castor stuttered as the gods gave him a nod. Naruto saw Mr. D's shift just a bit brighter when looking at his son, but it was very discreet. I am Ethan Nakamura representing the male Cabin number 13. Ethan grunted, not even pretending to be formal as Artemis frowned but did not do anything directly. Apollo did give him a look of pity which made the son of Nemesis even more furious. Hi, Lord Apollo, Lady Artemis. I am Lou Blackstone representing the female Cabin number 14. Lou said cheerfully as both Artemis and Apollo gave her looks of approval. Naruto guessed the extra cabins would feel a bit resentful for not having individual cabins for their parents, but it looked like the daughter of Hecate was right at home. Now we can. Chiron started before Artemis coughed, getting everyone attention. Wait a moment. Why is Percy Jackson not here to represent Poseidon? Artemis said bluntly as Naruto smiled happy his mother agreed with him. My lady, Percy is a new camper and he is the only one from his cabin, so Luke said as the temperature dropped dangerously low. Luke, I'm new and I am only active member of my mother's cabin. Does she not get a voice? Naruto asked as his eyes burrowed and voice dropped as everyone gulped. This was compounded when Artemis fingered a knife and glared directly at Luke. Of course not. I would never mean that, my lady. Luke stuttered, fearing for his life. He hated the Olympians but was not foolish enough to anger one in their domain. Good. Now we shall bring Percy Jackson in so every cabin who is able can get a vote. Any objections? Apollo added with a sweet smile as everyone frantically shook their head. Chiron was about to summon a camper or satyr to retrieve Percy until Apollo shook his head and snapped his finger instead. Instantly Percy reappeared in the seat for Cabin 3 looking ready to puke. Dad, can you please do that nicely? Naruto asked with a sigh as Apollo just shrugged and snapped his finger again. Instantly Percy regained his normal colors as Chiron caught him up. Alright, I suppose everyone here and the other gods who are listening are wondering how I can have a son and retain my status as a maiden goddess? Artemis asked rhetorically as she swore she could see that Annabeth girl's eyes start sparkling. Is Naruto like me and my siblings? A brainchild? Annabeth guessed as Chiron tried to shush her for interrupting before Apollo waved him off. No, Annabeth, my origins are a bit different to everyone's, to be honest. Naruto responded with a thoughtful look. Over 30 years ago there was a distortion near Olympus that father instantly was paranoid about. Apollo started as everyone but the gods flinched when they heard thunder from Zeus grumbling. None of us Olympians could enter or influence the distortion until Artemis and I happened to touch it together. Zeus ordered us to go through together, much to Artemis' annoyance, so we sent a portion of our powers to keep the sun and moon running smoothly on the side. Apollo acknowledged as Mr. D grunted, confirming the story. What we didn't know was going to that world as gods would make us subject to that world's rules. We got reincarnated as mortals with our memories and powers mostly sealed. I became a woman called Kushina Uzumaki and Apollo became Minato Namikaze, and we lived their lives unaware or who we truly were. Artemis continued as everyone stared at Naruto, who had a small smile as if he heard the story hundreds of times. You don't mean that? You both Silena guessed as she saw where the story was going. Our mortal selves fell in love, got married and even had a child together who we named Naruto in hopes he would become the hero in Apollo's sensei book. Artemis admitted with a stoic face, but Naruto could see despite her expression she still did enjoy her memories as being mortal. Naruto's birth was the happiest day of our lives. Apollo said proudly as he stared directly at Naruto when he said this, making some of the demigods feel slight jealousy at a god showing such open and honest affection for a child. However, some things happened in that world and our mortal selves died and the same day Naruto was born. Apollo said sadly as the girls gasped and the guys gave Naruto looks of pity he refused to accept. Our mortal selves' deaths restored our godly powers and memories, and we knew it was time we returned to Olympus, but we could not find in ourselves to leave our child which our mortal selves loved and created, so we brought him to Olympus and convinced father to raise him in the hunt until this year. Artemis finished as most of the council looked at Apollo and Artemis with awe for doing so much for their child. Unseen to everyone, however, a certain one-eyed son of Nemesis and son of Hermes' eyes were glinting with hatred as this proved everything they hated about the Olympians. Here they could not get recognition for every child to be accepted by their godly parents, but one child had all the love of two gods for himself. Wait, if Naruto was conceived when you were in mortal form and Lady Artemis is still a maiden in her godly form, does that not mean Naruto is immortal then? Annabeth said as she realized from hearing the story. Yep, I am mortal, but I am a special mortal. Naruto said mischievously, grinning when Annabeth pouted at him. What Naruto means to say is people in that world have powers called chakra that makes them as powerful if not more powerful than demigods, so despite being mortal in a sense he really is a demigod in an odd way. Artemis revealed as everyone looked at Naruto in awe. Can you show us something cool with your powers? Katie asked as Naruto looked flustered at all the attention. Before anyone could ask Naruto more, Mr. D grumbled, okay, explanation time is over. Now only Nate and Perry stay. Everyone else go back to your cabins now. Mr. D commanded as everyone looked disappointed. Silena and Annabeth waved goodbye to Naruto before they left. This left a nervous Percy with three gods and his friend Naruto, who sighed. Dad, Mom, I think Percy is a bit well nervous to be around three gods at once. Why don't we fetch Grover so at least he has a familiar face besides me to see? Naruto suggested as Percy sent him a grateful look. Sure, why not? Chiron, could you fetch that satyr for us? Apollo asked nicely as Chiron bowed. Of course, my lord. Just give me a few minutes. Chiron replied with respect as he wheeled him out the door. Several minutes later Chiron came back with a confused Grover until he saw Artemis and became awestruck. Lady Artemis, I am like your biggest fan. It is an honor to see you. Are you enjoying your time at camp? Grover said in rapid-fire mood as Artemis looked rather uncomfortable. Apollo on the other hand looked rather amused, although Naruto looked outright annoyed. Naruto grabbed Grover by the shoulders and started shaking him. Stop hitting on my mom. Naruto shouted, infuriated that the satyr was trying to get on his mother's good side despite how uncomfortable it made her. Artemis beamed at her son in pride. That's my boy. She thought to herself, seeing the same principles that she taught him shine. After a minute Chiron coughed and said, I think he gets the point, Naruto. Naruto set Grover back down, who looked in a daze and a little embarrassed. Naruto, I knew you smelled like nature when I first met you. Grover exclaimed, awestruck that Naruto was an actual living son of Artemis and almost beamed nature like his mother. Mr. D coughed and said, can we get on with Pete? as Grover stood next to Percy after a few seconds. Why I am here? Percy said meekly as Naruto gave him a sad look. I will be blunt. Father's Master Bolt, the most powerful weapon in existence, was stolen during the winter solstice and he believes Poseidon stole it through you, Percy Jackson. Artemis said stoically as Naruto frowned and Percy gaped. What? Zeus is crazy! Percy claimed as thunder boomed ahead as Naruto flinched slightly while his parents gave him discreet looks of concern. Mr. D and Chiron sighed while Grover looked ready to wet himself. Percy Jackson, it is not wise to insult the gods so lightly, especially Father, Artemis warned as Percy squirmed away from her calm but intense look. Father is paranoid, sure, and we here can all agree Uncle is no thief, but Father needs somebody to blame and Poseidon has always been an easy target, Apollo admitted as he sighed, making Percy clench his teeth. So, what, I am guilty just because Lord Zeus doesn't like my dad very much? Percy snarled with great sarcasm as Naruto sent him a look of pity. It has been that way with the gods since time started. Just like I assume all monsters will hate me as Mother makes a sport of killing them over and over again. Naruto acknowledged as Artemis and Apollo gave him worried looks. Mr. D looked stoic but did nod very subtly. Percy looked out the window and saw angry-looking thunderclouds starting to converge on the camp, making him furious. His new home was being punished by Zeus over him. So, what can I do if I don't have the stupid bolt? Percy asked, ignoring the thunder outside. Your friend doesn't like to be controlled, does he? Artemis whispered to Naruto, who shook his head with a fine smile. You will have to consult the Oracle to get a quest to find the Master Bolt. Chiron explained as Mr. D scoffed. The kid should just let me vaporize him and maybe Father will spare the camp. Mr. D suggested but raised an eyebrow when Naruto stood in front of his friend protectively. Artemis and Apollo gave him a look daring him to hurt Naruto, which made him shudder slightly. Quest it is. Go upstairs into the attic and talk to the Oracle for your prophecy, Chiron said kindly with a brave smile as Percy saw Grover give him a thumbs up and Naruto a smile before he climbed the ladder upstairs. Why won't you move on to the next toast? Apollo mumbled in frustration as he was annoyed. Even when he was gone, the Oracle stayed in her decaying body instead of fresh new host like before. Artemis put her hand on his shoulder for comfort. Artemis turned to Naruto and before he can say a word she said harshly, do not go on this quest, Naruto. Naruto looked shocked before he asked, why Mom? Percy is my friend and I want to help him. Apollo smiled at Naruto's loyalty to his friends but agreed with Artemis. Because Naruto, if you join Percy on his quest, even your mother and I will be limited in our ability to help you. We will be bound by ancient laws not to affect your quest much if any, so if you go it will be without her help, Apollo warned as Naruto's eyes widened. Naruto did not know that the ancient laws would affect him being mortal on demigod quests as his parents were always there for him, but if he went with Percy he would be on his own. I hope you all liked the video. And if you all want the next part of this video, please like the video and comment 3 hearts. Please subscribe to my channel so whenever I upload a video you will notify.